Happy Friday. Happy Friday. So, how do we go about making sure that as a training and development team that we are being, that we have a seat at the table, right? I like the analogy of, there's the adult table, there's the kids table, right? Think family meals. And I think in a lot of I shouldn't say I know in a lot of organizations, training and development feels like they are sitting at the kids' table, right? They are not taken seriously, or they're not viewed in the same light as, some of the sales team, or, the data analytics team within an organization, right? I'm just kind of choosing some of those at random. But that's something, it's a complex issue, but it's something that we can take a look at, and we can make some small changes to make it easier for us to be taken seriously within our organization. And that's really what I want to talk about today in this L&D lunch hour. It's an older article, but it's not that older as in it came out at the beginning of this year. So the company or the organization behind TikTok, right? You're seeing my 45 years as I'm calling it Tic Tac, because that's what I call it to my kids so I can drive them nuts. But TikTok's Chinese owners, end of last year, beginning of this year, went and fired their entire talent development team. Wiped out somewhere between 70 and 100 employees, and, went, training and development basically, as it was known within ByteDance, that the overall owner, training and development was completely wiped away to be done, something, I guess treated some way else, or somehow else. In that article, basically there is, and you can just Google, TikTok fires L&D, and you'll get the article. But they released some information from a memo, and it's quite interesting. So, I'm going to read just two little pieces. So the internal memo that HR leaders received said that the team's work, and the team being the talent and development team, had limited practical value and represented a disconnect from the company's needs. Right? So in that situation, right, that simple, that simple sentence, one line, basically said that talent and development team, prior to getting fired, was not being treated, or was not being viewed seriously, was not sitting at the adult table at ByteDance, the overall owner of TikTok. It goes on further in the article with a quote here. Many learning events, such as online talks of mediocre quality with over 1,000 people, or sharings given by key opinion leaders, which could be easily found on the internet, did not make very effective use of our employees' time. And that's, again, a quote right from this article, or from a memo that CNBC had received about this. Right. So I want to stress that, that feeling of, we're not being taken seriously. It could be self-imposed. It could be, imposed from another location. But this event has happened, right? Entire team gone, right? I'm not saying that your team's going to be let go, but I think we need to be cognizant that we are actually, as a training department, meeting the mission, the needs of our organization through what we do. And making a few small adjustments, looking at things a few different, from a different perspective, can help us be taken seriously. All right. So today we're really going to jump in, and we're going to look at a few things. Talk about audience, language, training as an asset. How do we tie it all to our organization? I really kind of want to just go through these quickly. Give yourself time back in your on this Friday. Probably a sweltering hot day like it is here just south of Boston. But with all of these, if you have any questions, you agree with me, you disagree with me, let me know in the comments, or mash the like, or the one of the the emoticon icons on there. I would love, I always want to hear what you guys think in regards to this. But first off, let's talk about why is it important for us to know our audience for us to be taken seriously. All right. So I actually, about a month ago, I did a whole one of these sessions on understanding the four audiences of ILT and VILT programs. I think it's a paramount concept that we really need to consider. It plays a huge role in how we actually develop our material, but it plays a just as important of a role in how we are viewed within the organization itself. So I'm not going to dive in, into the whole thing, because obviously you can watch that video. And in chat, I am actually going to put these in so that you can access these as they go along. I recommend watch it after this, right? Let's finish the stream and then you can dive into that. But keep it simple. There's four main audiences. We have the learner, we have the facilitator, we have the stakeholder, and we have the organization as a whole. All right? Each one of these has a different why training, why, performance outcomes, why it's important for us to be doing something within the training and development world, right? So just quick, as an organization, right, some of their whys, they want to make sure that the training is meeting or helping the participants meet the visions, values, and vision, mission, and values of the organization, right? Or they want performance increases in their employees, right? They want a happy and engaged workforce. They want to increase employee retention, right? Those are some of the whys training is important for an organization. Where, for the participants or for the learner, they're looking for, job-centric training or problem-centered training, right? They're looking for training that's going to help them with career development. They want to know how this training is going to help them. Their training to be, geared towards competencies or things that they need to do within their specific role. It's also a great time. It falls within knowing your audience. It's kind of a side shoot or something to consider about this. This is a great place to just quick reminder, just because training is important to, let's say, a stakeholder or it's important to the organization does not mean it's important to the learner, right? And this is why understanding the why of each audience, knowing our audience, is going to help us, because now we can tie them, if we can sell it in a way that's going to get buy-in from them. And the way we're doing that is we're looking to speak their language, right? We want to be able to talk in the language of our audience so that we can relay what's important to them to get buy-in, right? We want to make it relevant to that audience. So in terms of, speaking their language to the learner, it's about, going back to those whys. How is this going to make their job easier, right? How does it help them move forward in their career, right? So we're as a facilitator or as a training a training and development team, we're putting on our sales hat, right? We're going through and we are lining up and showing them what they're going to get out of this training, right? So we want to police their action or police how we're going about this so that they can see the benefit, right? We don't want to come across as a joker as we're doing this training so that, and I was trying to badly put puns and put Snapchat things on just because it's Friday and I thought I'd have some fun. But to be serious about this is we want to make it so that they can see what's in it for them, right? The WIFM, what's in it for me. And again, that comes down to each audience, right? So if we're looking at the organizational level, which is really, we want to be taken serious within an organization, how do we do that? What's the language of the organization? And I see some chats coming in here, so let me pull this up. What do we have here? This is totally marketing. Absolutely, right? Everything is marketing and sales, right? Do you have kids? Guess what? It's time to go to bed. That's a sales call, right? That's a sales or a marketing thing. We've got green beans for dinner tonight, kids, right? How do we sell them on eating this? Please, this on a side note, as a parent and as a former child, don't sell kids on vegetables by putting them in brownies. That's gross. Please stop doing that. All right, but we want to. It's Friday again, right? It's long week. It's the summer. It's like dripping hot in Boston. So sometimes my mind just goes elsewhere. But, jumping back to how do we speak the language of the organization, right? It's knowing their why. Big one. Be able to talk numbers, right? How much does it take you to, how long does it take you to build, a 90-minute virtual training session, right? So in terms of hours, what's your budgeting cost in terms of, materials and, labor hours, all of these things. The more we can talk numbers, which is generally the language of an organization, the more often they're going to take you more seriously. In one of the other sessions I did a few weeks ago, where I was talking about the portfolio and the portfolio. Why it's important for a training and development team to have a portfolio where you're keeping track of, when we build a level 2 e-learning, it generally takes this amount of time. When you figure in the budget of my man hours and the tools that we use, here's what it costs us. And now we can say, all right, hey, sales team, you want a level 2 e-learning? Here's what it looks like. And here's on average how long it's going to take. Here's what the budget is. You need to set aside a certain amount of money for this. Now, that's a different conversation you need to have within your organization, but I think it's a big way to get buy-in for, other departments to support your training after the fact, right? We all know training is only effective it's only as effective as the support the training receives after the fact. So if we want the sales managers to support the training that we just went through, we need to have buy-in. And one of the easiest ways to get buy-in is to have the director of sales, or whatever that department is, have a portion of their budget tied to it. If they've got skin in the game, they're going to stay on top of, the managers or the senior managers to make sure that they're supporting the sales reps who went through the training, because otherwise they just wasted money. And guess what? Sales never wants to waste money. All right. So that's the idea of speaking their language. Find the way you can talk in a way that makes it relevant for them and lets them see what's in it for them. Again, go back with them. What's in it for me? But look at it from their point of view, right? What's in it for you is you're being taken seriously, better job promotions, all those things, right? So take a look as an organization, as a department, of how can we go about this information, and how do we get, how do we relay and get buy-in at the audience level in their voice? Okay. The next one, and for me, this is a huge one. You need to view every piece of training that you build as an asset of the organization. So what do I mean by this? I'm going to use an example to sell this. I was working with a client not that long ago, Fortune 100 company, market capitalization of $27 billion, right? There's less than 100 companies in the U.S. and in the world that have that much, value in their company. And my guess is it's probably more now. The way they built training was a PowerPoint deck, meaning it was PowerPoint slides. There were no notes written down. There was no guidebooks. There was nothing, just slides. Now, people have gone through, right? They built the slides. As a training department, you've gone in, you've invested time to make those slides. Facilitators have gone in, or whoever, the developers have gone in, created the material, but at some point, it strictly became information that was in a selective few people's heads, that they then showed slides and talked about everything that was in their head. That is not an asset of the organization. Because what happens when that Grey's Anatomy bus comes down and takes out that facilitator? That's my new analogy for, when someone calls in sick, right? I'd rather like to think of it, Grey's Anatomy, like every season something tragic happens to somebody else. That's my new way of describing it. But your facilitator has left the company, right? Or they're out sick, they're on extended sick leave, or they've got a promotion, or they're teaching another class, and someone else has to come in and teach this course. If all they have is, a PowerPoint deck that then, they have to figure out what it is. This is where we end up with people just reading a slide deck to somebody, or we just hand them the slides, right? And you wonder why in the way something's taught in Texas versus Boston versus Europe is different. And it's because we haven't set ourselves up successfully to lead something consistently. So if we view something as an asset of the organization, meaning we invest time, we invest money, we invest, manpower into it, at the end of the day, there needs to be something tangible. So if we went down the TikTok route and the entire talent and development team was wiped out, all their training material is still there. Now, granted, in that situation, you probably didn't want the training material if they're willing to wipe out the entire department, but you get my point. We want to have a tangible item, whether it's physical or electronic, that people can reference back to. And, again, this is why I harp and I harp and I harp on the importance of facilitator guides and why we need to write everything down and why we need to write, how we want things to occur, the mechanics of training. It's because we need to treat training as an asset. You start treating training as an asset, you now can see these as individual pieces that now can be used to solve other problems. Right? It becomes something we can physically say, here, take a look at this. This can help us. Or we can take this piece to help this issue. Right? Obviously, the repurposing, we need to, it's not a one and done. It's not pick from here and put there. There's still work to be done, but we now have tangible items, right? In terms of, if you get into finance, these are things that we've invested money into. They are going to, they could depreciate in value based off of, knowledge or systems changing, but it is something that is an asset of the organization. So if all you take out of this, start treating your trainings like assets, things that we can tangibly hold in our hands or digitally view on our screen, and that everything is in there. That's going to be the biggest step right off the bat. All right. No, that wasn't the one I needed. Let's go here. So lastly, let's look at this as how do we tie this to the organization? And for this one is probably a little bit more outside of L&D, or it's L&D plus, C-suite or things like that. But it comes to a point where we need to think about who's the ultimate audience for what L&D does, right? Because I can, right? I couldn't find a picture of a shepherd, so I thought I'd just become a floating sheep in a field, right? If L&D is the shepherd, who's our flock, right? Who are we the stewards of? Is it the learner? Is it the stakeholder? Is it the facilitators? Is it the organization? And I think this is a question that we need to, you as a department need to have, and I think it's one that you actually need to have with the powers that be. For me, at the end of the day, believe that the training and development department is the steward of the learning objectives or performance outcomes that we're trying to achieve, right? I don't think the training department should be the steward of the participants, right? Participants could be the sales team. It could be, it could be HR, it could be IT, it could be anything with an organization. And there generally is going to be some sort of, organizational flow, right? So in the sales team, there's sales managers. They're responsible for their sales team. So as the training department, though, we are, at the end of the day, we need to make sure that the outcomes that we're trying to achieve are what's happening. And so when we tie this to the organization, if we can look at what we're trying to achieve with training, right? And that's generally done in that, we start that off in the needs analysis, right? In the analysis and the design phase, right? But at the end of the day, our goal is to make sure a specific objective, a specific outcome is achieved. When we buy into this concept, it gets a little bit easier now when it comes time to decide what's the best manner to deliver training, right? In that design phase, one of the things is, where should we go? How should we teach this material? How should we facilitate this material? And I think a lot of times in a lot of organizations, it's almost shoemarked or shoebox, like, hey, we got an issue, build e-learning. We've got an issue, because of COVID, it's virtual training. Like, issue, and it's like immediately, here's where we're going with it. Instead of saying, issue, what are we trying? How are we going to fix this, right? Or how are we going to get this, get the objective across? And we can now, if we make ourselves the steward or the shepherd of the objective or the performance outcome, we can now look at, hey, in this situation, we may not need training, right? This could be done with a simple, maybe like a simple video and a job aid, right? And that will address that issue. Or, this one probably needs to be done in person, in the classroom. Or this one we could handle doing virtually. Or this one gets across in this way. But we are now gearing to solve problems, drive people towards learning objectives, drive them towards performance outcomes, versus going through and shoeboxing in, like, we build training, it goes, it needs to be an e-learning so we can load it up into our LMS, right? LMS, and this is not going to get on soapbox rant. LMS is not an answer, right? It's a tool to help us store stuff. It's there to track information. It doesn't solve problems. That's the end of my soapbox for now. But, in terms of how do we tie this all to our organization, one thing is, how do we look at defining our roles and what competencies within the roles, what competencies tie to what specific roles, right? So if we can tie competencies to roles, now we can train towards competencies, which now make roles get better. If we look back to the idea of knowing our audience, right, which was here, knowing our audience, and I said, what did learners want? They wanted to show career development, how to fix, problem-centered training. Well, if we can have if we train towards a competency that's going to help them solve an issue, get better at their job, or get better at the job that they want to do, that's awesome, right? They're getting what they need. When you look at the organization, they want performance increases. If we get someone better at the competencies that they need to do their job, guess what happens? Their performance increases. So we need to come back and we need to look at, again, how do we tie what we're trying to do as a learning and development team to the overall needs of the organization? And when we start having those conversations, and I just noticed my lights are flashing behind me, but when we tie those to our organization, in their needs, their values, you're going to be taken seriously. People are going to ask you to come talk to us about this. We want to learn more, right? If you haven't read The Fifth Discipline, do so. Like that, the whole idea of the learning organization, right? That should be one of the high-end goals of a learning department, is to get to that stage where, the business objectives that we're trying to achieve, we're using those to set up the performance outcomes or the learning objectives that we're building for our training, and how do we measuring whether they're successful or not, and all those things, and it becomes, a circle that we're, it's everything's feeding itself and feeding back into it. So, to me, those are the big things from this, right? For me, knowing your audience, speaking their language, hugely important, right? But the one that just, speaks to me internally the most, and actually, I'm going to come back. I'm going to come back to this one because there was something at the end there that was from last week, but the, training as an asset as an organization, if you can buy into this concept, right, the other things really start lining up. Like that, for me, that's the one I would always go for. I think knowing your audience and speaking their language, just a refresher. Like we all know that. Sometimes we don't apply it, but we know that. I think viewing training as an asset of the organization, huge one. Go for that one. That's the one that's going to make the biggest difference off the bat. And now let's look at when we're, knowing our audience, figuring out how do we tie this all into the organization. For me, you take those 4 steps, let's say, put those into place over the next month or so, and you're going to see your organization take leaps and bounds in the view that you have or that's being held about them within your company, right? We're going to get away, this isn't going to be your company, right? You're going to be shining. People are going to see the benefit of their training. They're going to be excited to go into it because we're tailoring it to meet the specific needs of the organization and the learner, and each one's going to be able to see what's in it for them. So with that, open up the floor to question and answers. Again, I haven't really seen, other than Jason coming in, which, Jason, definitely appreciate the comments. Please let me know at any point, if I can help in any way. There's my phone, there's my email. Please reach out to me, from there. I will say, for the last couple weeks, I tried just doing this onto YouTube because, to be honest, like, how do I put, at the end of the day, I want you guys to be, get the information where you're at, right? Get that concept. So going forward, I'm going to be doing this on LinkedIn and YouTube. Just going to YouTube, I didn't feel like I was getting as much information out to all of you. That being said, first, again, watch wherever you like. More importantly is that you get the information. But, when you go to the store and they're like, hey, and you pull out your card and they say, do you want cash or credit? Or, debit or credit? There's if you don't know this, debit is always better for the organization. They're charged less money, on a per transaction basis for debit transaction versus or credit transactions. If you're between the two, YouTube, for me, would be more beneficial. But again, watch where you want. What's going to happen is I'm trying to get to 100 users or 100 subscribers on YouTube, which then will allow me to get away from youtube.com/ a whole bunch of like letters and such. Actually, I'm going to put this in the chat just so you guys can have it if you need it. So I'll put these in here. That's the YouTube, but eventually when I get to 100, that will become youtube.com/Pat Michaels, which is just a lot easier to advertise. But so if you ever see any benefit in these, if you're not subscribed, please do so, or you like or comment. All of those make things a lot easier for me. But at the end of the day, I want you to get information that's going to be able to, make your life easier and do what you do, and really prompt your thought process. Challenge maybe what we're thinking, or you're going to come up with some new ideas off of this, or say, hey, Pat, you were full of stuff, right? I probably shouldn't swear on this, but do see we have a couple things. Megan agreed when I hear Pat present training as an asset in the past session, it was a game changer for me. Megan, thank you. As always, I love having you come on, and I'm glad it really changed the way you were thinking of things. Tanji, thank you. Thank you for coming on. It was great meeting you yesterday as well. But with that being said, we could actually come in under a half hour today, folks. So I'm going to say I appreciate you guys coming in, joining in. Anything you need from me, please reach out. And with that, hope you have a wonderful weekend. And everyone else is saying stay cool, so enjoy the heat. All right, take care, folks.